Good morning, everybody. Today I was studying in First Peter chapter 5, and actually made it through a whole nother chapter. Good thing they're short. And what I was studying today is a lesson that I learned a long time ago, but is something that I have to be reminded of many times. And I think the same thing goes for really anyone in any kind of leadership position, or really anyone that is in ministry, or to be honest, it really rings true for anyone. And I'll kind of explain. Peter talks about how God opposes the proud, but he blesses the humble. And his whole chapter is basically on that. But what I don't think people understand, and I didn't understand, is how to put that into action. The Bible talks about if we make ourselves low, God will raise us up. Those who humble themselves. How many times do we hear the Bible talk about when we humble ourselves? And one of the things that I think is cool about that is a lesson I learned when I was younger and I started out in ministry. I was doing children's ministry. I'd been doing children's ministry for about 2 years. And I had this father come to me, and he was upset because the way we handled the situation with this child. And so he began to berate me. And I didn't really... I listened to him at first, but once I realized that he was belligerent, I just gave him the attitude of, well, I'm the children's pastor. I know what I'm doing. You've never done this before, and I don't have time for this. And I walked away and left him there. And later I talked to my pastor about what had happened, and my pastor said, well, did you act in the way that Christ would have acted in that moment? Is his soul worth it? And I thought about that for a second. Is his soul worth it? So what was he suggesting I do? And it goes back to what Peter says here. Peter says, don't lead out of compulsion. He says, lead people voluntarily. Let them come to you voluntarily. Let them voluntarily follow you. That's what Christian leadership is really all about. And so he said, you should have loved him through his frustration and let him get his frustration out and humbled yourself to him, and eventually God would raise you up in that situation. So I went back to this man and I called him actually one morning, and I told him, look, I'm sorry for the way I acted. I don't know why I got so frustrated. I should have been able to explain to you better what went down and how things happened. And, there was no grace in this phone call. He began to instruct me on how to be a better pastor and how I should do things. And, of course, he's never been a pastor. And some of the things he was saying was actually true. Some of it, if I'd have shut my mouth and listened, I would have heard things that would have helped me be a better pastor. Of course, he continued to kind of berate me and give me a lot of... he challenged me. But through my gritted teeth, I forced myself to say, thank you for helping me be a better pastor. And later, this man who continually came to me and gave me advice all of a sudden started coming to me and asking for advice. He started to ask me where I stood on things, and actually took what I had to say with more than just one of his friends. And eventually God raised me up in that situation. And you see that happening in Scripture all the time. When you humble yourselves, God will lift you up in situations. Pastors are not supposed to lead with the thumb on someone. He's supposed to lead with humility. He's supposed to lead in a way that it's not you feel like he's pushing you to the extent that he's got his thumb on you, but you feel like he's driving you because he's humbling himself to you and lifting you up and building you up. And that's not easy. I got to be honest with you. It's really, to be humble to this guy was really, really tough for me. But that's the point of Christianity, is that we're not supposed to live like the world tells us to live. We don't lead because we know so much and because we stand on top of them. We lead because we are willing to do what it takes to bring that person to an understanding of Christ. We're willing to do what it takes to lead them into a Christian life. That's what a pastor leads like. That's what a Christian leads like. When you're the father in a home, the Bible talks about don't embitter your children. It's talking about the fact that you don't just cram all this down your children's throat and force them to believe these things. You bring them in a loving way to understand who Christ is. You're humble with them as well. At the same time, you are the leader of the home. But you don't have to lord it over them. You don't have to lord it over everybody that's around you, and that's hard because, you know, in today's society, if you're a leader, you're to be so strong, and you're supposed to, you know, take on, you know, all this managerial. I don't know how to put it, but you don't have to be that way. In fact, the best way to lead is just be like Christ. Just be like Christ. Peter talks about that, and I think the rest of the Bible is pretty clear on it. Jesus is very clear on it. If you want to lead people, you got to love them. If you want to lead people, you've got to make yourself lower than them. Jesus made himself lower. He went and he washed the feet of the disciples. Are you willing to wash the feet of those that you will lead to Christ, even if they're kicking you while you do it? That's not an easy one. That's what God gave me this morning. God bless y'all. Love y'all.